Tonight, for the first time online, I'm happy to share with you who are the Brazilian Jewish spirits, how specific events in Brazilian Jewish history influenced Umbanda and Spiritism, what attracts Jews to Brazilian spirituality, how both mystical traditions can enrich each other. We'll be talking about this with 5 very special guests from Germany, US, and of course Brazil. Let's listen to the ritual Umbanda song that calls Jewish spirits. Brazilian Umbanda medium Bia Schneider recorded it specially for our program with help of Julia Weigert.
Saravá, Shalom. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Echad. A primeira estrela no céu tem 6 pontas. A primeira estrela no céu tem 6 pontas. E quem adentra esse terreiro são os filhos de Israel. Na sexta-feira acendem vela para os anjos lá do céu. A primeira estrela no céu tem 6 pontas. A primeira estrela no céu tem 6 pontas. Quem abre o mar e dá passagem é Moisés e Iemanjá. Na luz judaica os rabinos trazem as águas da Torá. Quem abre o mar e dá passagem é Moisés e Iemanjá. Na luz judaica os rabinos trazem as águas da Torá. Der erste Stern in die Himmel hat 6 Ecken. Der erste Stern in die Himmel hat 6 Ecken. Der erste Stern in die Himmel hat 6 Ecken. Der erste Stern in die Himmel hat 6 Ecken. Der erste Stern in die Himmel hat 6 Ecken. Der erste Stern in die Himmel hat 6 Ecken. Der erste Stern in die Himmel hat 6 Ecken. Der erste Stern in die Himmel hat 6 Ecken. Der erste Stern in die Himmel hat 6 Ecken. Shalom.
Good evening and welcome to Queen's Public Library. My name is Alex Minkin, and tonight's program is about Brazilian Jewish spirits. The following is the message from Queen's Public Library. Queen's Public Library is open for to-go service which is to pick up and return materials at several locations. If you are interested in finding out more or for other virtual Queen's Public Library programs, accessing digital materials, getting an e-card, or making a donation to support the library, visit queenslibrary.org. Visit my2020census.gov. The pictures are taken from the site, or call 844-330-2020. And now we begin the program. Columbia University professor Diana Brown discovered a unique community in her research in Rio de Janeiro in the late 70s. A small religious center was devoted to study and interpretation of Kabbalah and was composed entirely of Jews. What made the center so unique is that its congregants used Umbanda spirit possession to communicate to biblical prophets. Diana Brown published her book, Umbanda, Religion and Politics in Urban Brazil, in 1986. It has 256 pages and only 2 paragraphs on Jews and Umbanda. By that time, I read all the books and academic articles in both English and Portuguese about Umbanda, attended excellent Umbanda course at Instituto de Pesquisa em Memória Pretas Novas in Rio de Janeiro. There was nothing about Jewish spirits in Umbanda or interactions of Jews with this Brazilian religion. So I decided to concentrate my studies on this topic. I started with Rio de Janeiro, where you find most recent Jewish immigrants to Brazil, and continued with the north of Brazil, where you have descendants of new Christians, Jews who were forcefully converted to Christianity, how they affected local religions, including Umbanda. Jewish themes have a small but powerful influence on Brazilian culture, from carnival to mysticism. Recently, at Rio de Janeiro Carnival, Jewish Culture Center joined Mangueira Samba School to present the story of 10 Commandments, and the show won second place in the competition. Spirits of Jewish rebels, sages, and prostitutes similarly have its place in Umbanda and Spiritism. Jewish rebels refuse the oppression of dominant religions. Rabbis invoke mystical forces of Kabbalah, and Polish Jewish prostitutes offer advice on love affairs in Yiddish. Each of these characters can be traced to a specific wave of Jewish immigration to Brazil, from Portuguese crypto Jews of 16th and 17th century and Moroccan Jewish Amazon rubber boom workers of late 19th century to Eastern European immigrants of the 20th century. It is important to put it in perspective. There are very few Jewish spirits in Afro-Brazilian religions. Despite its relatively small number, Jewish spirits offer a unique angle to understanding Brazilian mysticism, as well as attitude to Jews in Brazilian society. As the power and pressure of the Inquisition grew in 15th century Portugal, the newly discovered land of Brazil became a favorite destination for Jewish converts to Catholicism, far from the Inquisition. Some of so-called new Christians still observed Judaism secretly. Jews helped to build the sugar industry, roads, bridges, and a basic sewage system. They prospered significantly in Recife, the largest city in northeastern Brazil. According to official records, during the 15th century they comprised 2/3 of the area of white residents. Recife was occupied by the Dutch in 1624, and so the next wave of Jewish immigrants arrived. They renewed the Jewish tradition and established first synagogue in Americas. The religious freedom lasted only 24 years until the Portuguese reoccupied Recife. Historians, including Professor Anita Nowinski, state that there are millions of new Christians descendants in today's Brazil, many of them continuing preserving at least some elements of Jewish tradition through the centuries. Memory of the persecutions and sufferings of the new Christians during the Portuguese Inquisition became myth in Brazilian folklore and religions, as well as inspired early Brazilian literature. The next wave of Jewish immigration came to Amazon in mid-19th century, when Moroccan Jews were fleeing poverty, pogroms, and persecutions. Why did they come to the Amazon? First, Brazilian law of 1814 opened the Brazilian ports to all friendly nations without exception. Secondly, the rubber boom was a very attractive economic opportunity. Last but not least, the Moroccan Jews originated from Spanish and Portuguese refugees from the Inquisition that already had roots in Brazil. At first, only young men capable of hard manual work came to the area. Many of them married indigenous women. As a result, the Jewish community in the Amazon spoke Portuguese and a dialect that mixes Hakitia, Moroccan Jewish language or Western Ladino, and indigenous language of Tupi-Guarani. It is in such mixed families that Jewish and indigenous traditions had their first encounter. Rituals of Moroccan Jews fell on the fertile soil in Brazil. The rabbis were considered tzaddikim, holy men, worshipped as saints and consulted as miracle workers. This notion is very similar to folk Brazilian Catholicism and Afro-Brazilian tradition of sacred healing. In 1904, the Jewish agricultural colonization began in the state of Rio Grande do Sul, in the south of the country. The main purpose was to resettle Russian Jews during the mass immigration from the hostile Russian Empire. By World War I, approximately 7,000 Jews lived in Brazil. Almost 30,000 European Jews came to Brazil in the 1920s. Despite a strict immigration policy in the 30s, more than 17,000 Jews entered the country. As the modern waves of Jewish immigration were arriving to Brazil, there was a small but visible number of Jewish pimps and prostitutes in most large cities. Several international groups operated the peak of sexual slave trade. Criminal gangs trafficked the women from all over Europe and parts of Asia. According to historians, Japanese and Chinese played the biggest role in the worldwide traffic. For almost 80 years, there was also a Jewish group named Migdal that trafficked illiterate Jewish women from the shtetls of Eastern Europe overseas, supposedly for marriage.
Gebeurt gekiemen zu gasten in Ruben. Zijn zo'n dag hierin. Ik was daar was de feest.
Bist du heute gekommen von Polen?
Ja. Ich gedenke alle meine Pläne von der Gassen. Ich habe gewollt, mich spuren nach Irland. Leider sie bador. Wo sie habe getroffen, es ist geben sie anders. Die darf es sich zu gewinnen, nicht leicht. Aber es wird sehr ärger, es wird gegen kämpfen. Sehr ärger. Sehr ärger.
Aber was will ich davon machen?
Wir sind in Abaisio. Und du wirst du arbeiten.
Es ist unmöglich. Das ist ein schlecht Hulem. Und wie ist der Jakob?
Es ist alles liegend. Das ist bloß ein Plan. Ein ganzer Meister. Deine Eltern Gerrit. Als euch haben sei. Die Geschichte in dich noch. Sei nichts in dich euch. Sie verdienen Geld. Sei sehen als Sache. Verbinden darfst du zu gewinnen mit dem Fall. Ich darf gehen in Salon Rezept. Als du wirst Apps darf, gif mich.
Migdal was based in the United States, Argentina, and Brazil. As most of the women came from Poland, they were called Polacas, Portuguese word for Polish women. Thousands of Polacas moved to Brazil. Some of them were still found in red light zones until the late 1950s. Rejected by the Jewish community, Polacas banded together to form their own synagogues and burial societies. Nowhere else in the world did prostitutes, especially Jewish prostitutes, form their own religious organizations.
Porque como elas eram barradas de entrar nos eventos da sociedade judaica, os chamados judeus bem postos e tradicionais também eram barrados de entrar nos eventos delas. Mas um amigo do meu pai, que meu pai me contou essa história, um amigo conseguiu entrar. E estava cheia a sinagoga, ele ficou em pé e uma dessas mulheres estava perto dele. Aí a mulher virou para ele e disse assim: o senhor não se incomoda de afastar um pouco de mim. Ele disse, por que eu estou me incomodando, por acaso? Disse, não, o senhor não está me incomodando. É que está escrito, não sei aonde, ela fez uma referência lá, que quando uma filha de Israel sai do bom caminho, a terra em torno dela fica ardendo. O senhor está pisando na terra ardente, melhor não pisar.
There is a reason Brazil is called incubator of religions. There are hundreds of mixes and variations composed of African, indigenous, and European elements. I want to focus on two religious movements, Kardecism or Spiritism and Umbanda, for two reasons. Both of them are calling on some Jewish spirits, among others. And secondly, both of them are popular among the Jews. Kardecism originated in 19th century France and is now almost forgotten there. According to its founder, Allan Kardec, Spiritism is simultaneously a science of observation and a philosophical doctrine. As a practical science, it consists of the relations that can be established with spirits. As a philosophy, it entails all the moral consequences that result from such relations. In Brazil, Kardecism added ritualistic layer and transformed itself into religion. There are anywhere between 20 to 60 million followers of Spiritism in Brazil. Umbanda is based on a mix of candomblé, where African traditional Spiritism is combined with popular Brazilian Catholicism, Kardecism, and indigenous elements. Umbanda practitioners believe that a spirit can be incorporated in the body of a medium, a congregation member who communicates between the world of the spirits and living human beings, in order to offer spiritual consultations or charity to the congregants. Umbanda emerged in the early 20th century at the same time as Samba, co-creating Brazilian identity based on the mix of African, indigenous, and European religious cultures. Official numbers of followers are less than 500,000. However, many are still afraid to claim that they belong to the religion, and tens of millions attend the rituals of Umbanda not as regular congregants. Majority of Brazilians come there for spiritual consultations. If we add these numbers, we can easily get 100 million people associated with Umbanda. This religion began with spirits of indigenous and African slaves, rejected at Kardecist ceremonies as low spirits. But during the last 100+ years, it turned into an open platform for any spirit that wants to manifest itself. I spent most of the time researching Jewish spirits in Kardecism at Spiritist Center of Jacques Cholam in northern zone of Rio de Janeiro. The community began as a family of Jewish immigrants from Palestine and Rio in the 1940s. Dulce Kogan found her mediumnic skill in her youth. She was communicating with spirits through automatic writing or psychography and was a very popular healing medium. Kogan family and friends, all Jews, founded the Spiritist Center in 1963 with the goal to practice and teach Kardecism to other Jews. I met with current members of the center, medium Yvonne Feinstein, who shared 31 psychographic letters she received from various Jewish spirits. Letters were typically received for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur and contained general greetings similar to those you may hear in the Reform Synagogue at the time. Some of the letters are signed by Rabbi Dr. Fritz Pinkus and Rabbi Dr. Hendrik Lemle. These two rabbis were the two most central figures in the development of the Reform movement in Brazil in the 20th century. Rabbi Pinkus officiated weddings of Yvonne Feinstein's parents and her daughter as well. Some of the letters are very poetic. Here is the medium herself reading the message from the Legion of Rabbis, in Portuguese, Falange de Rabinos.
Estamos aqui numa caravana, abençoando a todos e enviando nossas melhores vibrações e rogando a Deus que ampare e proteja a todos que aqui estão e a toda a humanidade. Falange de Rabinos.
Now it's time to talk to Professor Andrea Kogan, who joins us from home in São Paulo. She's not related to Dulce Kogan in the Spiritist Center in Rio. She's the author of the first and the only book exploring Jewish themes in Kardecism, called Espiritismo Judaico, or Jewish Spiritism. Andrea, how it all started? How did you discover connections of Brazilian Jews to Spiritism?
So, Alex, it all started with a curiosity when I was a teenager. I always tell this story because I think it's important to understand the Brazilian context of everything. But it all started when I was a teenager, so 30 years ago, or more than 30 years ago. And then I was born in a very Jewish neighborhood in São Paulo, but also in a secular environment. Okay, it was not an Orthodox environment. And I began noticing at that time that many Jews, relatives or not relatives, they were connected to other Brazilian rituals besides their Judaism. So it was very interesting, and I couldn't understand why they did that. And I couldn't understand, of course, that if it was connected to Spiritism or to Umbanda or to Candomblé. I knew that it wasn't part of our Jewish reality, but I knew that they were connected to other rituals, other religions, other practices, okay? And their practices were connected to specific Brazilian rituals, or there were rituals that were invented in Brazil or rituals that were practiced in Brazil. I couldn't understand when I was 15 years old. But okay, I was very curious about it. And as the majority of the Brazilians, I was very curious about the supernatural as well. We are a people that we are always interested in that, talking about supernatural stuff in general. Okay, and then after many years, like fast forward 25 years, I read a book that it was called The Jew and the Lotus by Roger Kamenetz, a professor, Roger Kamenetz. He is a professor in New Orleans, and he studied the Jews, especially from New York, that are also Buddhists. And then he described a trip that they took, many Jews together, including Reb Zalman, to visit the Dalai Lama in Tibet. And then he described this trip. That's a fantastic book, I recommend to everybody. And he also made a special research about Jews that were not connected to this trip itself, but were connected to Buddhism. And I thought to myself at that time, well, it's so interesting that Jews are connected to other kinds of religions. In the US, connected to Buddhism, and in Brazil, connected to other kinds of Brazilian rituals. And then I made a proposal at the university to have a PhD studying this phenomenon, studying why Brazilian Jews were connected to other rituals. And then we specified, and talking about methodology and everything, and my advisor and we talked about studying Jewish families, secular Jewish families that were also, or that are, because they are still alive, they are spiritists as well, or they are connected to Spiritism as well. So I studied that, or I have been studying this for 10 years. And then I wrote a dissertation that I finished the PhD in 2016. And then the book was published in 2018, exactly 2 years ago. But our research never ends. So we are always talking about this. My focus was on Spiritism, and now I am starting to study Judaism, Umbanda, and Candomblé. That's the idea.
Can you tell us about Jewish spirits you encountered in Spiritism?
The Jewish spirits were a minority, okay? In one house that I studied, that I've been visiting them, and well, I've been to their meetings weekly during many years. They had one Jewish rabbi that was not a popular entity, or the medium I think it was like once a month, maybe, or twice a month. I have witnessed him. I don't know how many times, but not so many, just a few times. And he was a typical Eastern European Jew that talked as he was giving his sermons, you know? He talked as he was giving his sermons in the temple or whatever, about general subjects, about pride, about envy, about love, about friendship. So he like chose a topic and gave a sermon, and he was teaching us a lesson about a specific topic. It was very interesting, but it was the only Jewish spirit that I found, because this medium that I studied, it's a woman. She was very, very powerful. She is a very, very powerful medium. And during one session, Alex, she channeled sometimes 5 or 6 different entities. And one of them was this rabbi. And he was called Rabbi Jacob or something like this. We feel like when we are there, Alex, we feel that there is like a waiting line on the other side, waiting to come to us and talk, waiting to come to us and have the opportunity to express themselves about something specific, about a specific topic, or about something in general, like I said, the rabbi did.
Good news, based on my research, if you approach Umbanda, there are more Jewish spirits to explore that descend today.
Yeah.
Also, there is more work in spiritism if you venture out of São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro, where I focus my studies. There were phalanges of rabbinos that descended.
No, I'm so curious to know all of this. I'm crazy, but now, because of the pandemic, there are no giras and the terreiros are not working, and it's so hard. Probably next year I'll be in Rio and everything is going to be nice, and I'm going to meet the rabbis from the phalanges and it's going to be great. Maybe we can go together again. Absolutely.
Yes, I can definitely connect you to a very sweet couple that part of the Jewish Spiritist temple in Rio. That were founded by Palestinian Jews, and there was originally more Jewish, and there are still, she shared fascinating psychographic letters from rabbis that she received.
Really?
So I think talking to older people would be something that we need to do urgently, because they are preserving some of the memories of less assimilated Brazilian Jews who incorporated more of Jewish practices in this rituals.
We have to do that. We have to take these letters and put them, I don't know, kind of a book or kind of documentary or something. We have to do something.
It's very poetic.
Yeah, let's talk.
Phalanges of Rabbinos is really poetic.
Really?
Oh God. Many artistic representations. That's definitely something that I'm looking to do.
Nice.
And of current representation.
We have so many projects.
Absolutely.
In common, thank God.
There are spirits of Jewish Indians in Umbanda of northeast Brazil, as is the case of Jewish Indian named Juguarema, who is resistant to Christianity. He is described as strong, brave, and sometimes violent, even crazy. These spirits were most likely inspired by new Christians. follow ceremonies today in Umbanda temples across Brazil calling for Oriental spirits, or spirits from the East, or Povo de Oriente in Portuguese. This includes Kabbalists and rabbis, along with other Eastern sages. These spirits are often called by singing hymns in Hebrew. I observed rituals that called Oriental spirits in several temples in Rio, including the Temple of Sun and Moon that appeared in the video earlier, and you can also see it on my background. These spirits can be traced to the waves of Jewish immigration from crypto-Jews to Moroccan Sadics to rabbis respected by the modern Ashkenazi community. Bia Schneider is Umbanda medium and singer-songwriter, or rather co-creator, because in her songs she is giving voice to the spirits that she is channeling. We started our program with Bia's song, First Star in the Sky Has Six Corners. She was talking to the spirit of a rabbi that lived before Holocaust when she was composing this song, that welcomes Jewish spirits to Umbanda rituals. She is joining us from her home in Paraná, south of São Paulo. Bia, how did you discover Umbanda, and why do you feel the special connection to the Oriental spirits?
I found Umbanda 5 years ago, 5 or 6 maybe. And at first, what called me to Umbanda was the music. I was a musician in the time, and I felt in the music the connection with the divine. I think for me, the Orient, the energy, a energia do povo do Oriente, is too important to me because I can feel this connections with another places and countries and religions at the same time.
More about your connection to Jewish spirit, because that was the most recent one. You were connecting to other spirits of the East, of Orient, and composed beautiful songs there. But then most recently you shared the song and recorded beautiful version of the song for our program. So can you tell us about communication with the rabbi that led to this song?
First, I talked with Eshu, and he called himself Eshu da Meia-Noite. And he told me that he was Jewish. He told me that I could now talk with a rabbin. That's why right, rabbin. And he was, I think maybe it's the most highest level that I felt from energy, you know, like so high level. And he was here in my room, and he told me more about God. He wanted me to understand what he thought about God. So God, in his words, in the Rabbino's words, was like water, pure and universal. And in different places of the world, we drink this water, but we call this water in other names. And like God is the same thing as water. Everyone drink water, but calls him in different names. But I'm having a lot of dreams with the Judaism. And sometimes I am in a gira, you know, like Umbanda, and there's full of from Judaism, but not with him actually, but another like others spirits. I can try maybe.
What other spirits are there? So far you mentioned Jewish Yeshu and Rabbi, and tell us more about this Rabbi. Also, you told me that he lived before the Holocaust. Can you tell us more what he told you?
So he told me that I asked him who was him, and he told me he was in this earth, like living before the Holocaust. But even before the Holocaust, he was already old. So I think it's a very old spirit. And he didn't tell me much because my connection was not so good, because he was so high in energy from me. I think that's why. And he told me a little bit about his story, about the Holocaust and everything. And he told me that after Holocaust, many history and essence of the Judaism was lost because so many books and everything was burned.
In your dream, you said that you have a Jira dream when where different spirits.
I think it was like a pomba gira. I think they're so full of women, like with dresses. Maybe it's pomba gira. Maybe it's just a linha do Oriente mesmo. I don't know. I think I was just there to understand how Umbanda has so many spirits from the Judaism.
Bia, how your conversations with the Jewish spirits and learning more about Judaism change your Umbanda experience?
Umbanda has sometimes a problem in when we think about, like, Oshala is an image, when I think the Oshala is an image, or Iemanjá is a woman dressed in a blue dress with long hair. For me, she's really more than that. And Judaism helped me to clear this idea, like God is beyond everything, we know is more than this human image that we create for ourselves to try to understand God.
Among the Umbanda spirits of the outcast, there are Jewish Ishus, Bohemians that may be traced to Jewish pimps, and there is a figure of Palaka. Being a prostitute in her early life, she belongs to Umbanda archetype called Pombagira. There is no evidence that Polakas themselves attended Umbanda ceremonies, as they tried to keep Jewish traditions. However, they were rejected by the mainstream Jewish community, while non-Jewish Bohemians were sympathetic or at least curious about Polaka's mystical rituals. At the time Umbanda was formed in the early 20th century, Polaka's suffering, combined with a devotion to Judaism, made them saints in Umbanda.
Yes. They are. We can understand them like as Jewish pombagiras, but I'm thinking that there is one problem. I think it's very clear within the Brazilian university scholars concerning Judaism that when they talk about Polacas or other kinds of specific figures, they do not connect to other Brazilian religions. They talk only about history, they only talk about philosophy, they only talk, the studies are not connected.
Sure, but that's exactly what we are doing, aren't
Yes,
we?
exactly. Yeah. But I'm talking that we are the only ones sometimes, Alex. And that's
Well,
why
it's a
we
rather
have
marginal topic. If we
yes,
are
it is.
considering number of Polakas in Brazil,
Sure.
and I think it's marginal within the marginal.
Exactly.
And it's just extremely interesting angle that left it waves that still can be felt in today's Umbanda, perhaps. But it's something that we can dig further, and there are still people who remember, who, despite the taboo, start to open up. And
yeah.
so I would be very interested to explore further the connection of Jewish exponents of mysticism to early Umbanda
Very nice.
theology, not just the more recent.
The origins and everything.
There's a number of reasons why Jews are exploring Afro-Brazilian spirituality. For most of Jews, just like most of the non-Jewish Umbanda practitioners, Umbanda is not a primary religion, but rather a mystical layer, a missing spiritual dimension of the first religion. There are some who cross the boundaries and leave Judaism altogether. Tonight, joining us from Oregon, Padrinha Jonathan Goldman, leader of American spiritual movement that combines Umbanda with another Brazilian religion, Santo Daime. Jonathan, please tell us, how did a Jewish guy from Detroit enter the shamanic spiritual path of Santo Daime and Umbanda? And, using the words of Rabbi Zalman, what was your Jewish post-traumatic stress disorder like?
look, in all movements, all spiritual movements and all political movements, a lot of Jews are involved, right? There's a huge percentage of Buddhists in the United States are Jewish, like that. We're seekers, and at least in my generation, we were raised to be socially conscious and to help others, right? And it was a big deal to be liberal and progressive and all that. So I came out of that, and unusual for many of the Jews that I came in contact with, had no problem being Jewish. I didn't feel guilty about it. I wasn't an anti-Semitic Jew. When I graduated high school, because I was the president of the Jewish youth group, I was sent to Israel in 1968, completely different time, right? I was 18 and Israel was 20. And so I never had any problem with that. And so when I found myself in the Daimi, it was completely unsolicited and unexpected in my own mind. I had no plan, no idea. I didn't know anything about it, which was good, right? Because I was, as we would say, I was completely mind blown. And I was fortunate that I didn't have any expectations. It was beyond expectations, right? So I found myself in the middle of the jungle in this spiritual path, which I didn't think I even wanted, didn't know what that meant, drinking this tea that I had never known anything about, because at that time, nobody knew what ayahuasca was or daimi. Well, I didn't speak the language. Now I speak Portuguese. I didn't speak Portuguese then. So I was completely mind blown. And so my Jewishness was an informing vibration, but I didn't bring that in because I was so overwhelmed with the call, as we would say in the Daimi, the call from the heart, with the healing potential, with how far out of any box that I ever expected that I would be in this was. So then I didn't even have a reference for a while, if you know what I mean. But that set up this juxtaposition between Jewishness and the as I say, the Daimi is a Gnostic, esoteric, primitive Christian path. Gnostic, esoteric, primitive Christian path. Primitive in the sense of the original practice, right? That comes from the Amazon forest. So it has all these overlays, and it has the overlay of the syncretism of Umbanda and Candomblé, has the native practice, has that primitive Christianity. So for a while, I was just like, wow, here's where I am. Oh my God, let's go, and going back and forth to Brazil. And then, but the Jewishness was always there. And as I said at the beginning, I was never ashamed of my Judaism. I embraced it. I was fine. I wasn't a practicing Jew in the sense of, I didn't go to shul, but I was who I am, right? So, but I had that thing in me, right? For me, Jesus was the guy who was hanging on a cross in the church. Like, why would they worship a tortured person? And he was the guy in whose name I got beat up on Ash Wednesday when I was walking home from elementary school. That's what I knew about Jesus, One little kid's holding my arms, the other kid's punching me in the face, saying, "You killed Jesus. You killed Jesus." I'm like, I didn't even know Jesus, So, but that was in the background. First time I drank daimi was on a mountain at Céu de Montanha, which is in Mauá, in a little church. It was the Day of the Three Kings, one of the most powerful days in the daimi. The Narrow Messe de Neo. They gave the gringo daimi glasses like this. And I'm looking at the table and I see this cruzeiro, right? And I start remembering pogroms. I start remembering the Holocaust. I start remembering right? The stories of my grandmother. You came from Russia. My grandparents came from Russia. I'm second generation American. You know, the stories of my grandmother talking about being a Jewish peasant in Russia. Belarus is where they came from. And I'm like, wow. Right? All of a sudden, I'm like, and these were nice people, but all of a sudden I was like, wow, where am I? What am I doing here? Right? So that PTSD that then played out in the ways that I already described came up super strong. So the daimi is amazing because, okay, I see that. And then I see that the cross is resting on a Magen David. I was like, okay, I can deal with the Magen David. I'm not going to forget the cross. I'm just going to focus on the Magen David. Meanwhile, then, I have a mirasal. And here's what I saw. This was the second true vision I had in the daimi. I see a group of people dancing in a circle, like a sort of like a Quaker meeting would be, like a circle of people, and they're all wearing white, and they're dancing in a village green, like you would see in New England or something. And they're dancing, they're ecstatic, and there's this beam of light coming out of heaven, and they're all like, wow, and they're happy. And then I see a church spire go like this, boom, and block the light. That was the first real teaching that the daimi gave me. My interpretation, which I affirm 32 years later is true, is that the light is one. There is only one universal light. So that's what it showed me. It's the structure. It was the church or the synagogue or the mosque, right? Or the temple that blocks the light. It's the structure, it's the institution, it's the ideology. And that has led me in my work.
I want to present another song specially recorded for this program. Hamburg, Germany-based Russian Jewish singer Katerina Ostrovsky is deeply rooted in Yiddish music tradition, but she became famous under the stage name Rosa Morena Russa. She is playing a music blend of Eastern Europe and Brazil, and invents a new music style she calls Bossa Russa Nova. She told me that the words of Brazilian scholar Bernardo Sorge really resonated with her. Immersion into Brazilian culture, he says, is highly therapeutic for the Jews, as it is an excellent antidote for their historic traumas. Katerina, please tell us about the story behind this Yiddish Afro-Brazilian spiritual song that you're about to sing.
I met this song, and it was about, it's not long as the text of the song, which is normal. It's like about the prophet or about the thing that you can escape from your destiny. But the situation, song is to be sung when a threat is not, it didn't fulfill. And I found it's something that I really learned in my family, on my 3 Jewish grandmothers, that there is a threat, there is a constant threat, and you have to do things to avoid it. And if a threat goes away, passes by, so you have to thank God in a very special way. And in this case, you have to thank God with a song. And I thought, wow, well, connecting to higher spirits with songs is something I know from Afro-Brazilian tradition. And it's something that I fully understand. Yes, it's me. So I will make a song about it. I will throw all this thing into the same pot. So I made this song, knowing that it can be a provocation because, you know, the Shema Israel say we have only one God, but in Umbanda you have different. So you don't care. And this is the story of this song.
Joina nui wie ist von Gott entlaufen. Hat nicht gewollt kein schliches gehen. Auf die Schiff hat es in Getteraufen. Wenn die Schifffahrtung kommt in der Gene, joina nui wie ist von Gott
More and more non-Brazilians I discover in Umbanda. Besides exoticism, music and magic that may explain initial interest, it has a very contemporary and universal appeal in its philosophy and rituals. Brazilian filmmaker Larissa Figueiro made a beautiful poetic documentary several years ago about a Portuguese girl visiting mystical island on the north of Brazil in her spiritual quest. The island is a center of local messianic religion Sebastianism, with strong Jewish and New Christian roots. It is believed that Portuguese King Sebastian, who disappeared in the battle in 16th century, is mystically hidden there on the island. Larissa, please tell us about the area where this film was shot and your personal connection to the place and the themes of spiritual discovery in this local Afro-Brazilian religion.
Maranhão is a land where a lot of new Christians and also some Muslims were sent, preferably sent there. This is a subject that I love very much because it's connected also with my personal story, because my father is a Portuguese and my mother comes from Maranhão, from the one village, a small village in Maranhão. And when I found out about this island, the Lençóis Island, I just wanted to go there because I found this island could give me some answers, some personal answers about myself. And so I was in a kind of a spiritual quest myself when I went there for the first time. And this island is known as the capital of Encantaria. I don't know how to translate it to English, but the reign of enchantment, I could say something like that. And the people there, they are all descendants from the same family, the first and only family that went there. And they believe this family is direct descendant from King Sebastian himself. There are a lot of people that went to this island. It's a very isolated island. It's not easy to get there. And people went there searching for this spiritual king and searching for discovering some secrets.
Naturally, I choose a small Umbanda temple in Rio for my own very unorthodox Jewish wedding. Both my bride and I wore white yarmulkes with added African Brazilian figa talisman in respect of all the spirits. 50 Umbanda mediums asked Moses and Yemaja to split the sea, bring borders of Torah, and blessings of the indigenous spirits.
Que lindo para quem tem fé. Que lindo, mas que lindo é. Que lindo para quem tem fé. Que lindo.